Welcome to today's final breakout session, Next Gen HR Preparing for Tomorrow's Leaders. Here to moderate is Lattice's Director of Talent Acquisition, Nicole Hirsch.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so thrilled to be here with this incredible panel, and I do recognize it's been an incredible day already. So I am here with the incredible Heather, Cailean, and Iezana. As mentioned, my name is Nicole Hirsch. I lead talent acquisition here at Lattice, and we are here to talk about next generation HR. Did you know that Gen Z is climbing towards a third of the workforce in 2025? I didn't know that. That's what we learned a lot about in preparing for today's conversation. And with this next generation, we're also looking to see how we can leverage Gen Z's unique skills and what they bring to the workforce and really bring every generation what it deserves. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panel, but we're going to do something a little bit fun in the interest of this being the last panel of the day and in the interest of this being kind of like a coming of age kind of a conversation as well. So I'm going to invite this wonderful panel to introduce themselves and what they do, where they're joining us from, as well as their first ever concert. So I'll start. You already know me. So I'll just share my concert, which is Ludicrous in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. What's up? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Redisch. I am the founder of the Talent Maven, which is an executive search firm specifically focusing on technology. I also do a lot of fractional work, going in-house, building talent management, performance management, and just communications and meaningful culture. And then lastly, about a year and a half ago, I launched a company called Adulting 101 Masterclass, which is helping college kids bridge that gap from college into adulthood. So I do internal corporate training for those rising and recent grads for etiquette and communication and all the things that we've struggled with from a leadership capacity. And I also do cohorts where I talk about financial literacy and moving out of your house and all the adulting tasks and responsibilities, if you will, that we didn't necessarily learn growing up, and I'm hoping to help them. So, and my concert, Janet Jackson, who's, I could do her whole Rhythm Nation dance right here on the stage. So that gives you, and actually, that was what I wanted to be when I grew up, was a backup dancer for Janet Jackson, so, yeah.
And she confirmed last night she's not accepting almost 40-year-olds into her adulting cohort.
No, right.
I'm Cailean Bailey. I lead global talent for Design Pickle. We were the first company to subscriptionize graphic design and design services, and today, 10 years later, we have a software as a service ecosystem that helps us deliver design at scale. Prior to being in corporate recruiting, I was a college soccer coach for 8 years. And so I make a lot of coach references. And my first concert was Montel Jordan opening for Boys to Men.
Nice. I'm Iezana Mekonnen from avenirHR. We provide fractional HR leadership to SMBs in the tech space, helping them move from reactive HR tasks to more talent strategies. Now, I've never been to a concert, but I play 7 instruments.
Are we going to sprinkle out,
Someone said
Iezana, what your instruments were throughout this panel? So stay tuned till the end, because we're going to hear about all of Iezana's instruments. Easter eggs. Well, with that, I'd love to talk about Gen Z being the first truly digital native generation. So I'd love to hear from our panel about how organizations can leverage Gen Z's technological intuition while ensuring that other generations aren't being left behind in digital transformation initiatives. And Heather, if you want to kick us off.
So I think historically, companies will look at their new hires, they're less experienced hires as really truly less experienced. But that in fact is not the truth with our Gen Z. They've really grown up in that digital climate, and they have so much to teach us. It's something that I really lean into when I'm coaching and working with Gen Z. This particular story that I have is about, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, I had a high schooler come to my house and sell me knives, which I still have to this day, Cutco. But he was unbelievable. And I said to him in high school, I said, when you get out of college, I want to help you find a job because you're going to be sensational. Fast forward, he gets out of college and I help him with a sales job. And so I've kind of mentored him throughout his career. And then about 6 months ago, he turns up on Instagram as a chef. And I mean, unbelievable. I knew nothing about this, but it wasn't just about his cooking. It was about all of his techniques on how he developed the videos and all of that. And I thought to myself, you know, it's so important. I can see that that is something I would love to learn. But older generations, we get stuck in our ways. We become quickly overwhelmed. Creatures of habit is what I feel like I can be. And noticing that they have so much to teach us. So I always like to suggest lunch and learns, where you bring your Gen Z in to talk about any topics that are interesting to them, and they share it with the whole company, not just with, you know, one generation or one group of people. Or doing mentor-mentee programs as well is a great way to integrate that and emphasize the importance of leaning in the older generations into Gen Z.
I want to come back to that mentor-mentee comment, but yeah.
Yeah, we're approaching a time when we have at least 3, probably 4 generations inside of the workforce nowadays. And so what I think of is every person that's an employee, except for the CEO, is reporting to somebody or potentially has somebody reporting into them. And so you know, for us, we're going through this big adoption of our performance management software in Lattice. And so we're trying to make it a systemic, like this is how we do things with how we're managing our performance. And so we've had people that have had really high adoption. A lot of our emerging leaders have really high adoption. They're really into it. They're technologically inclined. We have others who are, they call themselves old school, where they just want to kind of do it off the cuff. And as soon as we talk to them about, it's not about you, it's about growing the next emergent leader, and you're setting an example for them, and walking them through their growth path and you know, their leadership principles, so they can demonstrate that to their direct reports, has helped us get through some of that mentality that some of the other generations are slower to adopt.
Yeah, I love that. There has to be a mindset shift. I think Sarah talked about in the beginning AI being superpower. I challenge organizations to look at Gen Z as their superpower. As we mentioned, they've grown up their whole life in a digital space. So a lot of times we'll look at them and say, oh, they don't have enough life experience, but we need to look at their lived experience and hone in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to hang on to that with this superpower and this lived experience and this performance piece that you talked about too, Cailean, because Gen Z has grown up with instant feedback in so many aspects of their lives. So Iezana, let's start with you. And how are you considering adapting performance management and communication practices to meet these expectations while still maintaining this effectiveness across generations?
Yeah, like you mentioned, they've grown up with instant feedback, instant gratification, which can be good, or it can be bad. That's why the credit card industry is profiting, because of instant gratification. But when you look at feedback, you have to really put something in place. You know, I can't believe how many organizations still do yearly performance reviews, and then at the end of the year, you're surprised if you had some performance issues. But it has to be intentional, right? You can't just give feedback every time someone is messing up or has a problem. Gen Z will shut down if you do that. If you give them feedback every time they do something right, it's not as genuine, and then they don't begin to trust you. But if you put something in place where it's some type of regular cadence, I think you'll get the most out of it.
I think it's a double-edged sword because for me, there's nothing worse, and I'm sure other people can empathize with this, of getting a performance review and you're surprised in it. Like that shouldn't be the status quo. And so while I think that instant feedback can be good, when I was coaching, I used to say, be careful what you ask me because I will tell you the truth. However, you can't just constantly be giving negative feedback all the time without giving some sort of hope or growth path towards that sort of improvement. So for us, you have to, we use a lot of templates in our one-on-ones. We encourage our leaders to use templates and asking personal, professional, like recurring check-in so that everybody knows what's coming ahead. But I hope that no one is ever completely surprised in a performance review, whether it's annual or twice or quarterly or whatever it is, because those conversations should be happening, but they need to have some substance and depth versus just constant, good or bad.
So my mantra is be comfortable being uncomfortable, and Gen Z, because they grew up with smartphones, really try and dodge the uncomfortable conversations face to face. Performance reviews are extremely difficult for them, and part of my philosophy is self-advocate. If you are only having, which I agree is antiquated, only twice a year, a performance review, talk to your manager proactively and have the conversation. There's an author, his name is Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if anyone here, I highly recommend you read the book, The Anxious Generation. And what he talks about is how you give that feedback to Gen Z. They want it so badly. But you need to preface it by saying, I could do it in a warm and fuzzy way, and you're probably not going to get everything you want out of it, or I can be really straight with you. This is how you learn. And they say, be straight with me. So they want that feedback, but they also need to learn how to put themselves forward and self-advocate, and that is the responsibility also of the manager to teach them how to do that, because the only way they really feel comfortable self-advocating is through technology and their phones, because they just don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation face-to-face.
And if I can add to that, we have a core value called "Give it to me straight," and I've really taken that to my personal life, to my professional life. From the inception of the first interview, when we're sourcing and having those conversations, all the way through to onboarding and through 30, 90, and 180 days, that's constantly reaffirmed because we want to have a performance-driven culture. We want to win, and I believe you can do that with, you can do that the right way, but we try to set at the very top of the funnel the expectation that we do have this cool design, Pickle named company that's fun and we're remote. However, we have a performance management infrastructure. We hold people to that, and we are very open about that at the very beginning, so that they're coming into an environment that they feel comfortable and they like our culture. However, they know that this is a culture that you're not just here to do creative things. We want to actually move the needle and grow the business and win.
Yeah. And with the feedback, you have to provide them, well, what is the roadmap for me to improve? And this is how I'm going to support you get there as well.
All right, we've got mantras, we've got book recommendations. So something else that's been top of mind, not just for Gen Z, but the pandemic really normalized remote work, it normalized hybrid work. So I'd love to hear about how you're thinking about and designing flexible policies that can accommodate Gen Z's preferences. Of course, we had another session on 4-day work week earlier today, but then we also had a session on DEIB. So not just preferences, but also creating equitable and effective experiences for all workforce segments. And Heather, I know you've got a mantra.
Well, Well, the United States knows nothing in moderation. Like, we are an all or nothing, right? So we're either like 5 days a week in the office, or we were in COVID and we were remote. And that ended up being such a blessing, because before COVID happened, when I was looked at, even as a working mom, if I worked remote or at home for a day or two or whatever reason, it was assumed you were on your couch eating bonbons and watching Oprah. And we all know that you actually can be so much more productive at home when in moderation. Same thing goes for the office. Now, I will say, based on so many conversations I have with rising and recent grads, they are dying to be in the office. They want to learn on site, but they also don't want to be there 5 days a week. And that's understandable. Their kind of mentality is, if I act like an adult, then treat me like an adult. And there has to be obviously trust involved in that as well. But to me, and I know, you work at a remote company, which we'll talk about, but moderation, hybrid model, that's the way that you are integrating, that style, but also ensuring that you put guardrails in for your, your recent grads, because they don't know any different. And so you have to put that extra effort in for them, because if you remember growing up, you were pulled into that meeting last minute, like because your boss saw you and was like, listen in on this or listen in on this call. Those are really important moments for them too, that you have to keep in mind, whether you are hybrid or remote. So
I think the key with that is flexible policies, but teams have to be intentional.
Yeah.
I agree with you. They do want to go in, but we can't forget about the impact COVID had on that generation as well. And they do desire that in-person touch. But just curious, how many people have been required to go in and you end up going to work and you're still on Zoom calls with people? You're not even, right? So you have to be intentional. If you're saying come in 3 days a week, I think teams have to be intentional. Like this is the day we're going to come in, this is what we're going to do, moments that matter, because otherwise I could have stayed home and been on the Zoom call.
Yeah, I'd love to know the acronym for, I want to have the option for an office, I just don't want to be told when I have to be there. Yeah. That'd be my preference. But Design Pickle is a 100% remote first company. We've been that way since 2015 when we started. And so for me, it goes back to the expectation of performance and your role and leadership, setting that standard, and then providing that trust and autonomy right out of the gate until that needs to be addressed or corrected. So it also means we have to find really creative ways to connect. So I just started something called Just Cuz meetings, where I might work with someone in Connecticut and I don't typically interact with her, so I put 15 minutes on Just Cuz. So we'll just chat for 15 minutes, and that's a good way for us to catch up. And then we do try to do an annual event yearly or something regional, but yeah, we are remote, and we are really leaning into that in our recruiting and in the whole lifestyle design of that. And so that said, my dad used to tell me I could go pro at the water cooler. So it's a balance for me, because I would run the risk of not getting as much done if I was around people all the time.
So I'm hearing gathering strategy eventually. Yeah. Well, let's stay on this and talk a little bit about the kind of dreaded acronym of, maybe not for some people, but RTO. So some of the biggest American companies have mandated RTO. So Meta, Google, Apple, Airbnb, JP Morgan Chase, knowing that their organizations will be able to attract younger talent. So I'm curious, I mean, especially with all of the talent strategy that we've been talking about, where does that leave smaller companies who need to be more competitive with talent acquisition with Gen Z?
Start with that.
Yeah, I would say we've pivoted it into our EVP, our value proposition as a company, and saying, hey, there is no office for you to go to. Like, we are leaning into that. I would say that tactic has been really valuable for us, because we're able to actively source and recruit individuals who have been asked to return to office. Like I track the RTO mandates and like, well, I know a lot of those people have chosen to maybe move back home or they're in a rural setting or wherever, and they don't want to move back to whatever city. So that has become a big sourcing tactic for us because it's remote. We're never going to change. I still get the question in interviews, will there ever be an RTO? And no. So for us, it's really easy. We can lay it out and say this is the working way. You can create a lifestyle design. I mean, for me, I lived in Ecuador in 2022 for a while just because I was able to. I tell that story as part of a recruitment tactic, and people really love it. But it's very clear from the beginning, and we also want to be mindful not to have a pitfall where we're saying remote is not necessarily Oprah. Would you say Oprah and bonbons? Yeah. That we, and just to reiterate the performance side of it and that the expectation there.
You want me to go? All right.
Yeah.
So being in talent management for over 25 years, what I will say is one of the gifts of COVID was showing companies that you don't just need to be looking at talent within your city or within your state. There is such an opportunity to be hiring talent, nationally, internationally, and what an incredible team of individuals you can bring together for your company based on not having those specific guidelines. I think it depends on your particular generation, if you will, of you've done the work, you know how to structure your day, you know how to interact with others, versus the Gen Z that are really desperate for that in-person connection now. I think the larger companies, they have their name, right? So they will, recent grads will look at that as a resume builder, if you will. But that will get old fast. And when you realize that you don't want to have that kind of experience, these small to mid-sized businesses have such opportunity to be using hybrid and remote as a selling, recruiting tactic as well as a retention strategy as well. So, I mean, I will say I see far more candidates from those larger prestigious companies where you historically had seen them, 10, 15 years, and now they don't want to be there for that long because of what's going on. So.
Yeah, and a lot of bigger companies, they have the shiny things that have attracted people over the years, the free food, the ping pong tables, the arcades, but I don't think Gen Z is really worried about that right now. They're worried about things like mental health. They're worried about things like connection, like you talk about value, what am I contributing to an organization, career progression, things like that. And like you said, you can use the flexible policy, but with that, organizations have to be careful not to penalize people that are not in office. A lot of times when you talk about promotions or raises, you kind of overlook the people that are not in there in seats. So that's one thing to consider.
I love that. Well, there's a great question that's come in that meshes really nicely with one of the questions that we were going to ask about. Heather also kind of foreshadowed this a little bit about mentoring and mentee. So what's interesting is we're seeing in the research that more companies are embracing reverse mentoring, where Gen Z employees are sharing some of their digital fluency and their perspectives with senior colleagues. So I'd love to hear where you've seen these relationships transform both individuals and organizations. We've heard a lot about AI, so particularly around AI adoption and digital innovation, and what would make these partnerships truly successful, not just the knowledge transfer, but these moments that matter and these gathering strategies as well. And I mean, Heather, I'll start with you. You kind of seeded this one.
Well, so my feeling about the reverse mentoring is it's actually that you have to develop a relationship with each other and understand that you're both there to learn from each other. You, as the more seasoned executive, you're not there to just mentor, and the mentee doesn't need to feel like they have to learn from the more seasoned executive, even if you call it reverse mentorship, I feel like you default into, well, you're more seasoned and I'm less seasoned, so let's see how I can learn from you. It's actually leaning into the Gen Z, giving them a seat at the table. Someone talked about this at Transform, actually, and it was so profound because Gen Z deserves that seat at the table to give their lived experience. And so being able to share your stories, your upbringing, how, the first year I worked at a company, I didn't have computers or internet on my desk. Like that happened 2 years into me working. And then their heads explode, like as if I told them that I walked 10 miles to school every day. So, right, but it's really, it's investing in each other and understanding that if you, and this goes way beyond generational differences in the workforce, just hearing each other's stories and learning from each other, that will create the mentor-mentee, whichever way you want to slide it, relationship. Interestingly enough, Gen Z has a very hard time integrating AI into their lives. I think it's assumed because they're these digital natives that they automatically have adopted AI. Really, they are very scared of it. Part of the reason why is because school has told them they may not use it. School is, colleges and high schools are just starting to realize that this isn't going anywhere. And so you're either going to have to get on the ship or, spend a whole lot more time trying to figure out if AI was used or not. And so they're nervous about AI too. I think that Gen X, my generation, we are far more leaned into AI than Gen Z. So there's another opportunity for those conversations. So, yeah.
I think with, first of all, I love the term reverse mentoring. I think it's a fascinating term, but I think it's an emotional intelligence play from both the leader and the mentor-mentee. It's also a really big opportunity. Something they teach us in coaching school is the Socratic method of like, if I actually don't know the answer, which often I don't, it's an opportunity for me to ask that person, what do you think? And ask them back. And then you can maybe see what their thought map is, and if they would use an AI tool or something like that, or if there's a way to do it more efficiently, it's a big opportunity. For us, we're about to reinstate something that we call Pickle Talks. They're like our 30-minute version of TED Talks where we just give the floor to somebody. They can speak for 30 minutes about fitness, they can speak about AI, they can speak about creating digital art, and there's no restriction on it. It's just an opportunity for them. And so we're trying to encourage them to speak up and tell their story, what they have expertise in. And it can be anything. But you're also giving that person the floor and an audience where they can really get those repetitions of speaking and talking about things that may help other members of the company.
Yeah. And the reverse mentorship is really the how to use Gen Z as a superpower, right? And it's really going to help spark innovation, help break down hierarchies within the organization, and really foster a more inclusive learning culture. And it's really a mindset shift again. I remember when ChatGPT was first kind of coming out and becoming popular, I had a nephew who's 22 now, just graduated college last week. He was telling me about it, and I was like, oh, I don't really know about that. And then I needed it, and I was embarrassed to ask him. I was like, he should be asking me, how do you think, right? But I really didn't want to, but I broke down. He really showed me how to get the most out of it. Now, fluent in it.
You can tell him to sign up for Adulting 101.
Yeah, there we go. Plug it. So.
But I think empathy is the huge, connection there, is developing empathy for each other so that those experiences feel more meaningful.
I think a big opportunity, especially being more so on the talent acquisition side of my career, is when we're in recruiting scenarios, is asking all the generations, everybody, the same question of like, first of all, letting them know that we literally have an AI component of our software, and I'm also likely using an AI tool in the interview. There are many. So pivoting questions to candidates of like, how are you actually using AI? So it sort of lessens their anxiety about like, do they want me to, do they not want me to? everybody is going to use it in some capacity, whether you're writing a simple email or if you're trying to solve a complex statistics problem. So I found that to be a really powerful way to approach it head on and say, hey, like, we're using it. We want to know how you would use it in this whatever scenario, because that also demonstrates the competency of resourcefulness too, and maybe gives them confidence to show that like they can lean into it and that this company is cool with me doing it when they may have come from an environment in academia where they've been told no. Like, we're telling them yes because it's going to help the business. It's going to help them be more effective.
Okay, so this is, I don't know which person in the audience asked this, but this is an incredible tee-up, so thank you. So we have a Q&A question that came in that said, how will companies need to adapt if data shows that next generation employees are less interested in pursuing management roles? So Stephanie in the audience, you rock, that's an excellent question. Given that we've been talking about this, this mentoring element as well and this empathy piece, I'd love to hear from our panel, we haven't prepped for this, on how companies might be able to approach this about having our next generation of leaders.
I'll give it a try, and then you go interrupt me whenever you want. So I don't feel as if there's ever been real career paths for individual contributors. I think that it's always been kind of this, how do I get to the next level? And then that becomes a management path. And there is just not enough conversation around what if you just want to be, go to work and just be in charge of yourself and still kill it, right? So, and Gen Z has watched their parents work at companies for decades and then overnight and burn out and then overnight lose their jobs. And so that's part of the reason why I think that they're not pursuing these management roles, is because they've watched what's happened in their homes. And so the question starts becoming, there will be leaders within your company. You need to identify that. But there will be individual contributors also, and those conversations need to happen and need to be normalized. It's a great thing to have individual contributors. You need to have everyone on all ends of the spectrum. So I think it just needs to be a common conversation in the workplace.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think you can really build out career tracks, levels, and competencies for individual contributors for their career. But I do think there is often an assumption that everybody wants to be a manager.
Right.
And so I think what we have to approach is these people are still concerned about what they're building and the impact that they're making, and are they, if they're in a product or engineering type of role, like they want to build something, and that's okay. Some people just want to write code. They don't want to be a development manager or engineering manager, and that's okay. So it's up to us to make sure that they know what the track actually is. And so they don't feel that if they get to a certain level, they have to become a manager, that they can still be a really high-level contributor.
And beyond the management track, there's some people that don't want to keep going down the individual contributor track. Like, I want to stay where I'm at. I think it's about creating an environment of continuous improvement and learning, keeping them engaged. Can I learn something new in my role? Depending on what you do, can I do a lateral move, right? How do I keep this person engaged?
Well, shout out to all the managers out there. Some of you have wanted to do that work, and some of you had someone who believed in you and tapped you on the shoulder and said, come on, we're gonna go do this, and it's okay if you fail. And I think that that's the other piece too that we've talked about with empathy and hearing each other's stories as well, is that we have to keep doing that, so.
Some people probably got told to be managers too, and maybe didn't actually want it. So we have to support them as well.
Yeah.
That happens very often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times someone is a rock star as an IC, and it's like,
Correct.
We're going to push you into management. And it's like,
And then they're
I don't have those skills.
Yeah. So we have more questions from the audience. So this next one is, when Gen Zers disagree with change or with feedback, they tend to leave. So curious from our panel, how can an organization retain the Gen Z talent to ensure this growth and development? So as opposed to, okay, you get this feedback, you don't like it, there's a change, which is inevitable, and don't like it and move on, how do we ensure this growth and development? And Iezana, you were just talking about this, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'd love to start with you about this change inevitability.
Yeah, again, I think that goes back into how are we giving the feedback, and then are we giving them a path? If you're saying you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and that's it, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm out of here. But if you're like, we need you to do, X, Y, and Z, and this is how I'm going to support you, and it's okay. We're giving you grace to grow. I think that's a lot different.
I use the term truth and hope. Like you have to, obviously want to tell them the truth and where their areas of potential are, or if they're falling short on something, it's probably not great to just leave it like that and just be like, this is where you're failing, because then of course they're going to take that, and that's going to be it's really going to be hurtful to some people. But if you give them the truth and you say, but this is how you can improve in your whatever competency that role requires, and you help them actually map that out, and actually within Lattice is a really nice way to do that, because you can set goals, personal, professional. You can align them to a track, and so you know that if they want to get to the level 6 from level 5, that they have this actually written out for them, literally. And to be honest about it and talk openly about it, but encourage them to grow into that. Don't just give them negative feedback and leave them hanging. That's probably the genesis of the question that's been happening.
And you have to do that in the beginning, right? You don't wait till something happens to, like in the beginning when you hire them, let them know how you give feedback. What are your expectations? A lot of times, companies might not have these career framework set up, and they don't know the expectations, so they flee. But if it's very clear of this is what it means to be successful in my role, and to get to the next role, this is what it means to be successful, it's like there's clarity there.
So what you're saying is you definitely need to have Lattice to build out these careers.
You need Lattice.
That's what I heard.
I think transparency is, that is just one of the most important pieces of is one of the most important aspects to Gen Z, is that if there is change going on in your organization, again, historically, it's been a little tight-lipped. You're trying to create a message, and they can see through that. They kind of call the BS where the BS is. And so if you can have those conversations in a very transparent way, then they believe you and they believe in the mission, right? And that is the other part of what's important to them, is believing in that mission. And you as your manager need to have those open, honest conversations. Feedback is an interesting piece because they, I don't know if any of you have teenagers like I do. I have girls, and it's brutal, but that's not the point. The point is that they learn how to first communicate, sadly, through text messaging, and they talk to each other that way. They're in group chats. There should actually be, if you want to talk about 101, a tech, like how kids start learning how to text each other for tone, and because adults don't even, take it the right way. But when they get to corporate with that feedback, again, they can't sit behind their screens and get keyboard courage. They have to take it. And so you have to have those kind of open conversations of, listen, it's not your fault. This is how you grew up. This is my fault. And it's my job now to teach you and to tee you up for how to receive feedback, that you don't feel like you need to get up and quit. So.
Well, we've got time for, I think, one more question, and then we can wrap things up. This one is very near and dear to my heart, being a longtime recruiter and a talent acquisition leader, which is, what interview strategies or questions do you recommend in order to thoroughly vet Gen Z talent, and what signals should you look for? So, my fellow recruiter, Cailean, I'm going to ask you to kick us off here.
This is a really good question. I first of all think that everybody's a recruiter in some way. Everybody's a recruiter. We're all representing our company as a recruiter in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this. That's a really good question. kind of the genesis of this talk was about a digitally native generation. And so I referenced it earlier about asking questions about how are you using AI to do A, B, or C in the role. For us, very competency-based, so we want to make sure we're asking questions that are aligned to the competencies of the role. So you're like asking about other technology tools that they might have fluency into. Like maybe you're going to learn something new from them. The other thing I like to ask is how are they solving problems without AI? And for us, that's about how can we understand their creativity. I always say don't outsource your creativity to AI. For me, I would also ask questions that maybe tease out curiosity. I think that's a really good predictor of success in all levels. But we have a generation here that has rapid access to a lot of information very quickly. And at some point in the role, at least in our context, you're probably going to be asked to do something that you've not done before. And so if we tap into questions related to resourcefulness, curiosity, autonomy, drive, and see if you can tease out how they would do that in like a situational judgment question or just a behavioral type of question. That's probably where I would start. But I'd just love to chat with this person more because that's a really cool question.
Yeah, whoever asked this question, if you want to come talk to us afterwards.
I have a little bit of a take. So just because I work with these rising and recent grads, and to be very honest, they have a really hard time interviewing. They are really uncomfortable talking to adults. So when I was growing up, we had a landline, and so when I would call my friend, I had to talk to probably a mom or a dad or an adult, and it automatically showed me etiquette, right, Mr. and Mrs., and then I could eventually get on the phone, right? They don't have conversations with adults. So I've always taken the strategy with really anyone, to be honest, but especially with this generation, is get them to loosen up because they are so uncomfortable. And so the best way for you to really vet out their potential is to get them to relax. Don't make it such a stale, interview interaction. Really try and get them talking, no matter what it's about. Because if you're really good at what you do, which I'm sure if you're sitting in this room you are, you're going to be able to pull out what that potential will look like for them. And that's really what you're hiring on when you're hiring rising or recent grads.
One of our first questions in interviews is if your creativity had a soundtrack, what song would be playing right now? And that immediately gets them thinking about, like, everybody knows or listens to music or plays music. And so that does lessen the anxiety a little bit. And then we have other creative questions. But an actual question I do want to answer for the person I just thought of is, one of the most powerful questions that we ask in an interview, which actually doesn't really have a wrong answer, is what is something recent that you've learned that you've applied to your life or profession? I think really the only wrong answer is that they haven't learned anything recently, which probably means they're not right for our environment. But we found that to be a really powerful question because it's different. Not a lot of people ask that question.
Y'all got it. Y'all had it.
All right, well, we're going to do a lightning round wrap up because we've got Gretchen Rubin next, which I'm thrilled about. So, lightning round, looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what HR practices do you think will be completely transformed by Gen Z's influence, and which traditional elements do you think will remain essential regardless of any generational shifts?
Mental health, to me, is the big differentiator for Gen Z. It's not about sharing all your feelings in your life at work. It's about what are the supports you as a company are providing to support everyone's mental health. That is critical. Their lived experience is, I'm not going to use a swear word, but their lived experience as Gen Z is tough. And so that mental health piece is huge. Save myself.
Gen Z is a transparent generation. So the way we do employee engagement, I think, will change. A lot of times, companies will not share data if their scores are low. But that's the great opportunity. You need to share it when it's low and have accountability. So I think there'll be a shift there with employee engagement.
Yeah, I thought of the word. I think meaningful work that aligns to important work or work that is aligned to social influence, things like that. So meaningful work.
Amazing. Y'all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all of your great questions that you've asked. We have SHRM credits here. We'd love for you to submit feedback as well. We are so excited to have Christian Rubin coming up next. But before we do, can we give it up for this amazing panel? And thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to see what